Brett Devine, we're just about to go behind the barriers with Anthony Cummings. His stable's absolutely flying at the moment. But some really interesting news, bright news. We talk often about how anyone can get into horse racing as an ownership. Here's an example of it.
Yeah, what a sensational story during the week. My Runners, one of the great owner syndicators here in Sydney, they were offering everyone a chance to go into the Everest of all races. So for just $880, you could be one of the shareholders in a horse in the Everest. Really exciting period coming up where a panel will debate and select horses, and of course the people that buy into the horse will have a say in it as well. So for just $880, you can be a part of the richest race on turf in the world.
Wouldn't that be amazing, climb that mountain? And finally, and of course not lastly, because it's a very important story, we pay tribute to one of the great scribes of horse racing. It's a real community, isn't it, this sport?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Carol Williamson, who was the turf editor at AAP for the best part of 20-25 years, passed away sadly just last week, and we've honoured her with a race during the week, and of course her memory will live on forever for not only the media on course, but the many people and the trainers, the owners and those people that she came in contact with. We say, Vale Carol Williamson, a real treasure in racing.
Absolutely, God rest her soul. And as we say, it is a community, it's a family, and Cummings, no bigger name.
One of the biggest names in racing, Tim, and I'm sure he's got some great stuff here exclusively again for Australian Turf Club members on this interview today.
Joining us for the Australian Turf Club, Anthony Cummings. How are you, Anthony?
Yeah, mate, very well.
Isn't this a wonderful place?
Well, it doesn't get any better, does it?
No, I absolutely love it. And tell us about what this place meant to you when you came here as a boy.
It's sort of hard to put in words, but you know, I'd grown up in Adelaide and watched sort of Melbourne and Sydney from a distance, you know, as I grew up, and more interested in that than in any school book I ever saw. And you know, I had a decision to make when I was, you know, about 17, 18, 19 and whatever, about, you know, what I was going to do, and I had options, you know, so obviously enough in the stable, and one was to go to Melbourne, one was to come here or stay in Adelaide and whatever, and I finished up coming to Sydney simply because it was somewhere where you could be yourself and prove to be yourself, and where, you know, while the Dad's name was never one you could run away from, it was one where you could make your own name, you know, without being in his shadow as I would have been in Melbourne or Adelaide.
Yeah, well, you've certainly done that, and let's wind the clock back a bit, because at Doncaster's, I know, like, you've had so many close calls in Doncaster's. Casino Prince, everyone knows that story, but Road to Rock probably should have won that Doncaster.
Well, I thought so. You know, Ollie had a big breakfast on the plane coming up, and it made a difference.
Going up on the inside, Road to Rock, and Rangi Rangdu is joining in on the outside. Is it his day today? It's Road to Rock and Rangi Rangdu fighting it out. Rangi Rangdu on the outside is in front, and Rangi Rangdu gets his Group 1. Beat Road to Rock brilliantly.
Having a bit of a lend in his work, and hadn't really trimmed up the way I'd wanted him to. So we ran him in a 2,000 metre race that ran about a couple of 3 weeks before the race, and I told the bloke just to drive him out of the gates. I'm not sure if he'd be allowed to do it these days, but to drive him out of the gates, put him in it from the get-go, and just push him, and sort of get him in there and try and sort of stir the competitive juices a bit. And in doing that he did, but he couldn't finish the race off once again because, you know, in his track work he was having a bit of a bludgeon and hadn't gotten the fitness that was required out of those earlier runs. Anyway, having had that, he was quite switched on in his work leading into the race here. You know, we were quite keen on his prospects and thought he could win. I thought I convinced Ollie's manager and Mark Van Treat and Ollie himself, but obviously didn't do a well enough job or a good enough job to have him avoid breakfast.
Yes, that can happen sometimes, I suppose. It's just a reminder of how much discipline jockeys need. But Queen Elizabeth Stakes, 1 week later, I know it didn't make up for it, but the Queen Elizabeth, a great win.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think it was probably close to his best win. He was sort of going up the ladder in terms of fitness. The hard run at the mile the week before, it sort of was the icing on the cake, and he turned up in spades on that day.
Here's Road to Rock, he's chiming in fast on the outside. Road to Rock raced up and hit the lead with Triple Honour. Road to Rock shot away. He was second in the Doncaster. He weighed in overweight, but he's got the cash today. And Road to Rock comes in to win it. Beat Triple Honour, third home Monaco Consul.
And he went on to be a great stallion. We only lost him a few months ago, but Beauty Generation in Hong Kong, that was one of your great business decisions, selling him up there. Because what, he won nearly 15 million Australian.
Yeah, he's done really well. I mean, he basically did well for everyone who came near him, and I approached the sales in New Zealand with a view about what I wanted from a Road to Rock, the sort of pedigree that I was looking for, and what became Montaigne here and Beauty Generation in Hong Kong was that horse. And he won first up for us at Warwick Farm, and did a great job for us here. I think he only won the 2 races, but Group 1 placed. And then we got an offer that was impossible to refuse to go to.
Bit like the Godfather.
Something like that. Well, it was much more politely put.
Yeah, exactly. and look, we lost Might and Power on Easter Sunday, and tell us that story, because you found Might and Power.
Yeah, I'd been buying a few horses for Nick Moratis in that sale series, and we had a few on our list, for Easter, of which that Zabeel colt was one. The Wednesday night when he went through, Nick had pretty much put his cue in the rack, and the horse was passed in for the sake of that. So I didn't have we bought a few horses, and I didn't have another client to fill in, and so I didn't take the punt. But when he was passed in, I got excited and sort of ran over to where the horse had been stabled. Nelson Schick was there, and we shook hands on a deal, and then I sort of walked back, and I'd seen Nick on the way there, and he stopped to ask me what I was up to, and I said, "Oh, that was a Zabeel colt," and he said, "Oh, let me know how you get on." So I did, and he did, and I suppose the rest, as they say, is history.
What a horse! What a mighty horse he was. All right, so what about Mizzy and Libertini fans? Excited about the spring? They're having a rest, obviously, both of them.
Yeah, both having a rest right now. Mizzy in a second trial unfortunately hurt herself behind and had to go out for a while, but she comes back on a schedule that we'll have her ready for Everest time, and if she'll have one run leading in, and if she impresses, I'd be hopeful that she'd get a start there. She's shown herself of that quality. The run of the Scirocco here was exceptional, and she's been around the place in Group 1 races, and it'd be nice to be a starter in that race at least. And Libertini equally, in a year where her generation of 3-year-olds won the Everest, would be nice to see her go back there and add something to that year.
Wouldn't that be amazing? And look, Prince Fawaz, I'll finish off. I love this. It's a human interest story, and that's one of the things about horse racing. You know it better than anyone. It really does lift the spirits of people, brings people together. I know we aren't able to have crowds, but hopefully over the next few months that will return. But it's a great story, isn't it, Prince Fawaz? He's a Group 1 winner, second in the Rosehill Guineas this time round.
Yeah, horses play on your emotions, and when they get you up, they get you down. But it is a very exciting business. It doesn't matter how long you're in it, and how mundane some days might seem. But at the end of the day, it does get you up. So, the Prince Fawaz guys had a mate that unfortunately died, and they'd been as a group together for a fair while, and they wanted to do something in respect of him and his memory, and they decided to buy a horse and name it after him. So that's what they did. Edward, my son, met them at a wedding in Sicily, and they talked about all those sorts of things. So they came to the stable when they got back, got themselves organised, and we showed them 2 horses. One became Baller, and the other one was Prince Fawaz, both more than respectable and worth the trouble. Prince Fawaz is where they finished up, and as you say, Group 1 winner, Group 1 second in the Rosehill Guineas, and a lot more to come, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and I look forward to that moment when we get that group of boys and others that are horse owners to celebrate in the manner in which they did. And look, finally, it's just been great that, thanks to a lot of the work by the Australian Turf Club and Racing New South Wales, that we've just kept racing, and you've kept your 30-odd staff employed.
I mean, it's been a huge effort by the industry here. When you look around the world and lots of places going through what Australia is going through, and to have the mindset and to just sell the idea to the authorities that we can do this, we can keep it going, keep people employed, keep the racing going, give people something to look at, and still maintain, all the different regulations that have been put in place. So, all kudos to them and to all the participants that have lived by that in that time.
Always a pleasure, Anthony.
Pleasure.